my face, I can't breathe. Lift my face, I can't breathe. You won't see me on the recovery. You won't see me on the recovery. Lift my further into the night. Lift me further into the night. You won't see me till I'm ready to fly. You won't see me till I'm ready to fly. Crying out, but you still try to hide. Crying out, but you still try to hide. That's where I live, you're sure to lie. That's where I live, you're sure to lie.
Hello everyone,
You won't see me till
Rick here
too late.
from Recon Jeeper. I wanted to do a video today. Today is November 26th, and I've had a lot going on in my life. All is well. I want to start the video by giving a shout out to my longtime friend Chris Noel, who tracked me down. He is the producer of the great podcast Heart of a Volunteer, a special podcast that reaches out to veterans throughout the country. And I was his first team leader so long ago, back in 1994. And he tracked me down a few weeks ago and asked me if I'd come on to his podcast and do an interview, which I did. And I just wanted to thank Chris for that great interview, and also thank him for the great work that he does for veterans. So today is November 26th, and the last time you saw me, I was sitting in front of this Jeep and it was filthy, right? I had just gotten back from the working wheel that our club did at Butcher's Block. So as I said in that video, yesterday I ended up hooking the pressure washer to it and cleaning it up a little bit. Today, in just a few hours, I was able to give it a nice bath, polish it up a little bit. As I said, I wheel my Jeep hard, but that doesn't mean I can't take care of it and enjoy it. And it also gives me an opportunity to crawl underneath it and to visually check everything out, make sure there's no leaks, make sure everything is mechanically sound, which I'm happy to say that it is. So today I wanted to talk about a couple things. A friend of mine in the club, Jeff, his son recently bought a JKU Rubicon, and he was asking me some questions about, my Jeep, what I have. So this is a 2015 Hard Rock Rubicon Unlimited, and the lift on this vehicle is a TerraFlex 2.5-inch suspension lift. I installed it with my brother back in 2016. I'm really happy with it. I think it's a great lift. It drives well. Originally, all I did was buy their 2.5-inch suspension lift with their TerraFlex shocks. I believe they're the 9550 shocks. So I ran those for a while, and I didn't have any problem at all. I would then end up buying the TerraFlex Monster track bars, the one in the front and the one in the rear. TerraFlex boasts that they are about 230% stronger than the stock, and quite honestly, I believe it. Couldn't be happier with them. Pure beef. And then I was able to measure off the frame to the outside of the tires and perfectly center the Jeep over the axle. So I like those Monster track bars. The lift that I bought came with rear coil retainers, big washers basically that bolt down and hold the rear coils in place. I recently bought the TerraFlex front coil spring retainers. They're cheap, they're easy money, $10, probably an hour install. But basically I got sick of, on a full flex, hearing that coil snap off the perch, and then I'd have to pound it back in with a pliers and a screwdriver. So now that I run those coil retainers, the coils completely stay in place. I run the Wrangler MTR Kevlar tires, 35-inch by 12.5. Great tire. 315/70/17 would be the size of the tire. I couldn't be happier. I generally air these tires down to 12 to 10 psi when I off-road. I've never popped a bead, and as you can see by looking at the rims, they take a beating. But I really couldn't be happier with this tire. This is my second set of tires. My brother Chris also runs this tire, and another lift that I did for a friend of ours, Todd, he runs the exact same tire. My brother Chris, I'm happy to say, is approaching 20,000 miles. His Jeep is a daily driver. He's got 20,000 miles on these Wrangler MTRs, and I bet you there's 3/4 life left, 3/4 to a half. Outstanding durable wear on these tires. So that was a good purchase. So back to the lift, the TerraFlex 2.5-inch suspension lift. So when you buy that lift, it comes with new rear sway bar end links, and then the existing sway bar end links that you have on your Jeep in the rear, they get moved to the front. And I don't have or at the time I didn't have a compressor. I did the entire lift myself by hand with hand tools, you know, a variety of sockets and so forth, and the only thing you really need is a real good torque wrench. And it took me about 8 hours to install this lift. And then the last thing that you end up doing is adjusting your drag link, the sleeve on there, to straighten out your steering wheel. Your steering wheel can be off a 1/2 inch when you're done, and TerraFlex tells you that in the direction. So very, very happy with this lift. Since I installed this back in 2016, you can see here, maybe you can see, I now run Fox bypass shocks. I wanted to upgrade and go to a beefier, more professional shock, and now I run the Fox bypass shocks in the front and the rear. If you look through my videos, you'll see a video on relocation of the rear bypass shocks. The reason being is that looked all nice and all, and the shock is incredible, but I was having a lot of rocks when I rock crawl and so forth. The piggyback portion of the shock was coming down. The Jeep would come down and it would slam onto rocks, and what would happen was it would push that piggyback shock up, and it would sometimes pinch the stainless steel braided line that's on the shock. So what I ended up doing is, and you'll see that in my video, is basically mounting brackets on top of the tub. How you doing, Hudson? Basically mounted brackets on top of the tub, and then that bypass shock goes up out of the way. It was a home run for me, so that's something to think about as well. I also wanted to talk about today the Overline, the Metal Cloak Overline fender flare system. It was a big purchase, but you get what you pay for. These things are absolutely incredible. I installed them back in February. I want to say they took about 24 hours to install. I'm talking too much. I let this good cigar go out. Took me 3 8-hour days to install the Overline system. That's the rub rail, the standard size flare. That's what I bought. These are the standard size. They make a slim size and they make an extra wide size. I've got some video. I'll probably look through my videos and try to insert some into this video so you can see a little bit of what was involved. It was a great job. Every single part accounted for. The directions were phenomenal from Metal Cloak. You're able to go to a link and then just print them out in color. Very accurate. And I think the only thing that I purchased was kind of like a professional nut cert tool. It's a hand one, but it worked great. And I think I bought the proper size drill bit from Metal Cloak, and then I used the step bit. Sometimes I would use a variety of drill bits, and you would go up in size as you get to the finishing hole for the nut cert. But when it was all said and done, it just gives me so much versatility, incredible articulation room. I firmly believe that I could put 37s on this Jeep and with this Overline system not have any rubbing with this 2.5-inch TerraFlex suspension lift. So I also, at times when I go off-roading, I'll take the flares off. I like the look, and 2 Allen bolts in the front, one in the front and one right here, and this flare comes off and it leaves you with just the rub rail. And in the rear, you've got the same thing on the flare with 2 extra Allen bolts that go into the exoskin that you install. And then I ended up using my Hard Rock rock rails that came with my Jeep. I always liked them. So I called up Metal Cloak and I said, hey, can I install these rock rails on even if I run the ExoSkin along the underneath the doors and above the pinch seam? And they said, yeah, you can. And I think all I had to do was slot some of the mounting holes underneath and space it out with some washers. But rock solid, home run. I come down on these rock rails all the time. They take a beating, and I'm very, very happy with it. So I wanted to just talk about the Metal Cloak Overline system, home run. You can see the wheel well inserts that I installed from Metal Cloak as well. I had everything in powder black shipped to my house, powder coated black. And UPS showed up with, geez, I don't know, 5 or 6 huge boxes. Everything accounted for. Just couldn't be happier with this purchase. So, you know, a lot of people have questions about it, so I just thought I'd talk about it. So today, Jeff called me and asked me about my TerraFlex lift. Yeah, look, it's a great lift, a good suspension. It's an entry-level lift. I'm running all 8 of my stock control arms, but I've been able to negotiate some really good obstacles, and I'm really pleased with it. The only thing I'll say, I run a rock hard 4x4 1/4-inch thick rear bumper and tire carrier. It's very, very beefy. Maybe one day I'll do a video on that. And I also carry a lot of tools with me and equipment and so forth in the back of the Jeep. So I felt that I wanted to lift the Jeep a little higher in the rear to make up for all that weight. So I bought the TerraFlex 1-inch coil spacers that go on top of the coil, and that just leveled it right out perfectly for me. But as I said, the rear of my Jeep is quite heavy, so that's something to think about too. So all in all, I mean, the lift is all TerraFlex now, with the exception of my Fox bypass shocks. I run the TerraFlex track bar, monster track bar front and rear. And then in another video, I'll talk about all the Steer Smarts components that I put in the front of the Jeep. So just want to take a few minutes today, say hello to everyone. I just wanted to talk about the Metal Cloak fender flare system, okay? This past February, I purchased the Overline system. I purchased the ExoSkin that goes down the side here, this piece of armor above the pinch seam. And then I purchased the rear ExoSkin and the flares for that as well. So inserts on the front. So I ordered this all in powder black, and I ordered the standard size flare, okay? So this is looking at the standard size flare. I'm running a 35-inch by 12.5-inch tire, and you can see the beautiful dovetail, the way that comes in, all right? And as you know, this flare system comes in a slim flare that bolts to the rub rail, or an extra wide one. This is the standard one, okay? So that's looking at it right there, looking at the standard. So these flares unbolt, the front unbolts with the Allen bolt right there. And then the second one is right there. You can see that silver Allen bolt. Those 2 bolts come out, and that leaves you with a beautiful rub rail. And I do run the Jeep a lot like that. I enjoy it. Now, this is a Hard Rock Rubicon 2015. These are the Hard Rock rails that come with it. Now, in order to use these with the ExoSkin, I did have to put some spacers in there and just space it out a little bit, so you can see I've got a nice gap right there. So you can see it can be done. I come down on rocks all the time on these. They do a great job. In regards to the back, okay, the same thing in the back. You've got a Allen bolt right there. And the only difference is you have one on the inside right there, and a second one right there, and then the other Allen bolt. So 4 Allen bolts remove the rear flare, and then you just run with the ExoSkin. The ExoSkin is bolted on and reinforced, and that stays there. And then for those that were wondering, this is the corner armor, Metal Cloak corner armor that ties in beautiful. I love the way this ties in, and it gives you great corner protection. And then of course you get the flat LED lights. Okay, so I just wanted to take a few shots on that so that you can see the Metal Cloak fender flare system. I don't want to forget to mention the inserts, the front wheel well inserts. Look at these. So what you get is you get some bracing right here for the rub rail. You can see the rub rail right there. Okay, that's all reinforced. You've got a bracket right here that goes in there, and then you've got the insert pieces right here. So the inserts are this piece that fills that gap beautifully right there, and then the third piece is right here. Okay, and you can see that I run Rocklights inside all my wheel wells, and 2 facing down in the front, 2 facing down in the rear, and 2 facing down on each side of the Jeep. Just a beautiful system. Absolutely love it. A lot of compliments wherever I go, and it's very versatile and it's really strong. And lastly, I should mention I bought the little marker light right there. Okay, you can see it. That fits right in there nicely. And then the wire runs out of there. I used an existing hole and a little bit of duct seal right there. And then of course that ties in on each side. So beautiful system. Once again, the Metal Cloak Overline system on my 2015 Tank Green Hard Rock Rubicon. A lot of this black metal, the fender flares. I run the Hard Rock Rubicon front bumper. I just take the end caps off and I run it as a stubby. But you know, you all notice that when you're wheeling, everything gets dirty, it takes a beating, it begins to fade a little bit. My trick with these fender flares is always to use some WD-40, some kind of penetrating oil. You just put it on a rag and wipe them down, and look at the beautiful luster. I mean, the flares just come back new, and you're preserving the metal. So that's a great thing to do, and you can just make them look like new every time with very little effort. In regards to my TerraFlex lift, it took me about 8 hours to install that lift myself, and I'm really happy with it. I mean, the Jeep runs really well. I have the stock drive shaft, both front and rear. They're both stock. I also installed the TerraFlex exhaust spacers. Now that's very important and something that you don't want to overlook. This year I went down to Roush Creek, and I met a couple young guys there that had some pretty big Jeeps, and they were running 37s, and they were hitting that playground there right by the main entrance, and they were hitting it hard, and one of the guys just smashed into his crossover pipe and almost broke it and pushed it up in a V and smashed it into the boot on the front drive shaft. I look, he did not have the exhaust spacers on at all. So, you know, he had all this flex, and he never moved that crossover pipe back towards the transfer case, so that when the front axle droops, the whole idea behind it is that drive shaft will not smash into the crossover pipe. So, you know, I mean, for a $50 part and a couple hours worth of labor, depending upon how easily your exhaust comes apart, I mean, that's essential. So you want to install that as well, and I do have that. So I wheel my Jeep hard. I take it all over the place. Even with my stock front drive shaft, I've never had any contact at all with the crossover pipe after I installed the exhaust spacer. So that's something that you want to get as well. Some of you perhaps don't have Rubicons, and you'll buy the quick disconnects. My Jeep prior to this was a Sahara that I lifted with the same lift, and I went with the TerraFlex quick disconnects, and they were a home run too. You just got to be on level ground, and you pull a couple cotter pins, you tap off the end links, and then you swing them up, and TerraFlex provides you with some brackets that you can put the end links on just to get that sway bar out of the way. So that's something that you don't want to forget either, because you know, that gives you another 20-25% more articulation on your front axle. So a couple thoughts in regards to lifting the four-door JK. I have lifted 4 of these, and I've recommended to everyone the TerraFlex 2.5-inch suspension lift. The lifts were all a total success, and every one of the Jeeps that I've lifted, the owners of those Jeeps come back to me and say, wow, the Jeep, not only does it look phenomenal, they're all running 35-inch tires on it, but they cannot believe the quality of the ride. they all have told me that the Jeep drives better after the TerraFlex coils go on and the TerraFlex shock. I want to make mention of the gas cap, okay? I use the Drake billet aluminum lockable gas cap, but this here is the Mopar cover. That goes on there beautifully, and the ExoSkin just fits over it so nice, okay? Now, you'll notice that the overline system looks really good right now. It's got a beautiful black sheen. Listen, I installed this in February. I've wheeled this Jeep like crazy a dozen or so times. I've always been able to wash it nicely, and then for me, the trick is you take a little WD-40 on a rag, you saturate that rag, and you wipe down this black powder coating, and I don't care if it's your bumpers, the ExoSkin, the rock rails, or even the side mirrors. Just brings back a beautiful, beautiful shine. So that's the trick to keeping these things looking new, and it also preserves them. And of course, I use the same oil on the front bumper as well. There's a shot of the passenger side. Great product. And in regards to installation, I'll probably put some shots in of some of my earlier videos when I did the install, and let you look at that. I want to say a few words about the rims that I run. These are the Mickey Thompson Side Biters. I think they have a Side Biter 2 out now. These things take a beating, and if my dog Hudson decides to get out of the way, you can take a peek at it. But the Mickey Thompson Side Biters, what a great rim. Pretty much all four of mine are chewed up from the rocks, and no complaints whatsoever. Never even popped a bead, or in my opinion, even come close to popping a bead, okay? Just a great, great rim. And then, of course, I've got the Wrangler MTRs, the 315 7017 Wrangler MTRs. Kevlar sidewall, great tire. These tires here probably have, I don't know, maybe 10 to 12,000 miles on them. I wheel them hard, they take a beating, and they do phenomenal on the trail. And I generally run my tires at 12 to 10 PSI. That's what works the best for me. A good friend of mine with a ton of experience always tells me, Rick, 10 PSI, 10 PSI, and it's never let me down. So just want to make mention of the Mickey Thompson Side Biters, coupled up with the Kevlar Wrangler MTRs. Okay? All right. Just going to take a look here at the Rock Hard 4x4. This is a bumper that my brother Mike fell in love with when he bought the Jeep. It's extremely heavy, 1/4-inch steel. I have come down so many times full force on this bumper underneath, and basically once in a while it'll chip the powder coating. That's about it. It's got some good weight to it. So as I said earlier, because I carry a lot of stuff in the back of the Jeep, and I've got this tire carrier, the Kevlar sidewall tires, and this bumper system. You know, a lot of times I've got the chainsaw with me and a ton of tools and food and survival gear, you name it. We'll do a video on what I take out on the trails. But because of that, I decided to put the TerraFlex 1-inch spacer in the rear on top of the coil. And I just thought with the amount of weight that I have, that it just gave the Jeep a really good look, and just boosted it a little bit in the rear. So this is a great tire carrier. Now, what ended up happening in my case is you'll see that the Metal Cloak corner armor and flat LED lights are installed. And the reason being is because some of the trails that we run are so tight. I ended up taking my passenger tail light out first. I was able to fix that one, and then the second one took a good crunch, the driver's side, and then the license plate, for all you JK owners, knows that license plate ends up sticking out, the stock one, far, and it just becomes a target. Now look at the difference. That's the overline fender flare with the dovetail, just tapers right down, okay? And now there's no obstacles in the way. And these things have rubbed against trees, and they just hold up so well. little bit of WD-40 on these things after you give your Jeep a bath, and they look freaking new. So I'm real happy with that. Back to the tire carrier. Well, this is a home run right here. So I run the high lift jack. It swings out and it has a nice lock. And then you can see that my spare tire is right there with the high lift jack underneath it. And I sneak a tow strap underneath the tailgate door. And I got a nice 30-footer there that comes in handy if you got to give someone a yank out. But this is pure beef, this rear bumper right here. And I'm very, very pleased with it. My brother Mike picked it out. And I also look at the taper. See the way that tapers from the dovetail, and it tapers right down on an angle. Look at that for departure angle. Really nice. So I just wanted to make mention of this great bumper system and tire carrier by Rock Hard 4x4. Now, I'm very pleased with this company, and I am so happy with it that when I installed my belly armor underneath this Jeep, I went back and forth with another great leading company out there. And in the end, I decided to go with the Rock Hard 4x4 belly armor system, the RHX, the 1/4-inch one. And it's been a home run, and it has taken a beating. That also comes with a new beefy tranny cross member. That cross member that the tranny sits on was replaced. Took the stock one out and put the nice beefy one that comes with the system. And I really needed it because the stock stuff was just taking a beating. So very pleased with that. And then I would also, again, for Rock Hard 4x4, I went with the front control arm pieces of armor. You can see it right there. And then the other one right there. These things, your lower control arms take a beating. So I changed those out with the Rock Hard 4x4 lower control arms armor. And then I run the Rancho Armor diff cover, as well as the Rancho glider. And man, I'll tell you what, probably my favorite two pieces of armor are the front and rear Rancho diff covers with the gliders. And here is the rear diff cover armor with the glider that attaches to it. And for my rear shocks, I told you I run the bypass shocks. And I ended up moving the piggyback shock up top because when I would come down on rocks, it would take a beating. Now, if you look closely at the lower control arm in the rear and the shock mount, you'll notice a beautiful skid plate there. Those are Off-Road Evolution. I was just so happy that I could protect both the shock mount and the lower control arm. So I installed those on the Jeep for the rear. Very, very pleased with that product. Little bit of a challenge installing it, because the bolts are only so long, but it does work. The mounting bolts, your original bolts, and I just sandwiched that in there really nicely. Got good connections, good, nice and tight, and I'm very, very pleased with that piece of armor for those control arms. And as you can see by the scratches, and I just cleaned them all off and oiled them up to control any rust. You can see that they do take a beating, so something to think about. And then there's also a nice glimpse of the rear TerraFlex Monster track bar, adjustable track bar. What a difference in size. Pure beef when compared to the OEM. And then, of course, that allowed me to make accurate measurements in center of the Jeep. So I'm very, very pleased with that product as well. So there's a shot underneath from the driver's side looking forward, and you can see how that glide plate attaches to the front of the differential on that armored cover, and then it cuts across and then slopes up in an angle, and then there's a collar that goes around the top. And this thing is worth its weight in gold. It really is. Your differentials are the lowest part of the Jeep, and it's nice to be able to hit something and then slide off of it without having any significant damage. And then you can also see another angle of the front lower control arm with the Rock Hard 4x4 lower control arm skid plates. They do take a beating. You can see that the control arm. So So you know, another good shot of the belly armor. Love this system. Couldn't be happier with it. It comes with what they call a rock dome washer. One of mine from taking a beating, I lost, so I just put some washers in there. I got to call them up and get some more rock dome washers. But look at the beading, 1/4 inch steel. Then you can see the gas tank armor, and then of course that leads into my rear differential Rancho armor. So just a couple shots underneath to show you guys underneath Recon One.